Hello, here we go. So I will read the last little part of the last chapter just to help us remember where we are, because it got quite tense very quickly. Remember, they were in the temple looking round, because the temple is very close to the palace and the part where the prison is in the palace. So I think she's thinking she can maybe cut through somehow. But Miss Chaya, a surprised voice rang out. She whipped round at the top of the stairs. It was the temple keeper, staring up at her, puzzled. "What are you doing up there? Are you trying to get into the palace?" That's where we left it. Chapter 12. Chaya looked around and touched her chest. "Who? Me?" The temple keeper frowned. "Yes, you. Who else?" He was staring at her now, and it wasn't a friendly stare. She tried to think of an excuse. "Are we not allowed to be up here then?" "No, and I'm sure you know that." He came up to the steps towards her slowly. "And who are we?" "It's my friend, Noir. I was just showing her around the temple." "And where is she?" Chaya gulped. An idea struck her. "That's what I'm wondering. I've been searching all over for her." The keeper stopped and laughed. "Couldn't you have told me that, you little silly girl? Here I was wondering that you were up to some sort of mischief." "What, me?" Chaya laughed, trying not to overdo it. "Never." "Well, I've got to go back to my task. If you see your little friend wandering about, I'll tell her that you were looking for her." "Thanks." Chaya watched him go back into the passage leading to the shrine room. She peeped out from the gateway into the green lawns and the rectangular pools of the royal complex. A tiny walkway snaked in front of her, heading through the palace grounds and upwards into the Queen's prayer hall. Chaya looked around and took a deep breath. In about 6 hours, Nil would be taken out of his underground prison cell on the way to his death. She patted her pockets to check she still had the explosives. She was ready. Chaya stepped over the threshold and into the walkway. So that's obviously how she's going to get in with some sort of explosives. She was inside the royal complex. Chaya strode purposely down the walkway. If someone were to see her now, no excuse would save her. She left the path and went into the terrace gardens, creeping downwards from the side. She crouched behind a low wall and took stock of her surroundings. This was the ground level, with the wide promenade in front of her. In the distance, she could just about make out 2 guards on either side of the brick archway in the prison complex. Chaya edged towards it, keeping close to the palace's boundary wall. The good thing was that there was plenty of greenery on the prison side, so she's obviously hiding in that. Unlike the manicured lawns and delicate foliage on the formal gardens, the entry to the prison compound was full of mighty trees and rough shrubbery. She froze as one of the patrolling figures turned towards her. She stayed stock still, hoping she blended into the surroundings in her dirt-coloured clothes. The figure turned back as it continued to pace around the grounds. Chaya continued on, almost flat against the brown boundary. High guard posts stood in regular intervals along the wall, but luckily for her, they were looking outside at intruders trying to get in. She passed low under them, so close she could hear snatches of conversations inside each of them. "Going to the wrestling with Samar this weekend," one of the guards said to another as Chaya passed stealthily under them. "Leah is getting popular. I don't think the big boss will be happy," laughed some guards in the next post. "Ugh, dinner at my grandma's again. Her yam pudding's so runny," went the chat in the next post, and so on. The guards going on with their inner chatter as Chaya crept ever closer towards Nil. I'm not doing very well today. At last, Chaya was on the prison side. She climbed deftly up a hull tree, her toes gripping its gnarled bark. At the top, she moved over the over from branch to branch, avoiding an annoyed monkey and getting as close as possible to the prison entrance as on an overhead canopy of trees. She froze at the sound of a voice below. "He's a pretty young thing, isn't he?" Chaya leaned over and peered down through the leaves. 2 guards sat on a boulder, munching on sticks of sugarcane. "I mean, he was actually crying at one point. It's not right." Chaya felt a stab of pain right through her heart. "Shh," said the other. "Someone might hear. We can't question these things." "Yeah, I better keep my mouth shut. I just feel... shame." The guards fell silent as only the crunching of the sugarcane broke through the rustle of the trees. Chaya moved to the end of the branch and swung onto the wood apple tree next to it. The branch dipped down dangerously under her weight, and she scrabbled to grab something firm. A wood apple fell from the upper branch and bounced down near her. Chaya lunged for it, rocking the branch again, and a few more of the hard fruits fell down below, down where the guards were sitting. Chaya held her breath. "Ow!" said a guard, rubbing his head where the fruit had struck. He swore and lobbed the fruit hard against the tree, where it cracked on the trunk and fell down, and the brown pulp rolling away. Chaya held her breath. As long as they didn't look up, she was fine. "What was that?" said the other guard. And he looked up. Is she going to be spotted? Chapter 13. Chaya froze, crouching low on the branch, her hands gripping the stalks growing out of either side. The man stared up in her direction and then shook his head. "Ugh, stupid monkeys. They're a right menace," he said to his partner. Chaya exhaled. Hopefully, the man was just short-sighted. She moved along through the branches, jumping from tree to tree, sometimes coming across a group of monkeys. They stared as she passed, an intruder on their territory. Finally, she was directly over the prison building. Somewhere in there sat Nil, waiting as the hours ticked away. Now she needed to create a diversion. She stuck her hand into a pocket and drew out a stash of fireworks. They were from the New Year's celebrations. She'd found them in Father's shed, then spent some time stringing them together. And one of the good-for-nothing boys from the riverside that Auntie so despised had also helped her with a device to cause a smoke screen. But that was for later. She struck a match and lit the end of the string. It fizzled and sparked up, the flame zipping downwards at speed. Chaya drew her arm back and threw it as hard as she could. She knew exactly what she was aiming for. The explosive fell at the back of the prison, where the open kitchen was and where she knew nobody would be at this time of the morning. The whole thing exploded mightily, bits of clay pots and pans shooting all over the place and clumps of old connage splatting into the air. Chaya was nearly thrown out of the tree in spite of bracing herself with the noise. Around her, the trees vibrated and monkeys screeched. From below came shouts and the sounds of panicked running. A line of dish rags caught fire. The guards came pouring into the area from all over. Chaya swung down and dashed into the prison building. The palace smelled as bad as before, all dampness and sweat, but no one was about in the entrance hall. She hurried to the passage of cells she had visited the previous day. The iron railings barred it, locked, shut. Okay, so she set this explosive off in the prison kitchen, so all the guards have flocked to it, leaving the prison, more unguarded, so she's managed to creep in. "Neil!" she shouted through the bars. "Neil, can you hear me?" All she could see was a toothless man in the first cell who surveyed her with interest. An answering cry came from the last cell. "Chaya?" Neil sounded indiscellus. A bit worried and upset. "Yes, Neil. Where are the keys to the gates?" There was a roar and a crackle of the fire, and the gust of smoke air blew in through the entrance. "I'm not sure," said Neil, and his hand gripped the iron bar at the bottom of the passage. "What are you doing here? Get out before they find you." "I'm going to get you out first. Let me go and look for the keys." That made 2 doors to unlock before freeing. That meant 2 doors to unlock before freeing Nil. You need jams, said the toothless man in the first cell. Pardon, said Chaya. The man looked at her impassively. That's the man who's in charge of the keys. Do you know where he keeps them? But he stared through her, as if he'd never been talking to her. I'll take it that's a no then. Okay, hold on tight, Nil. I'll be back. Can't read a little bit more. The outer hall was still empty, and through the doorway over the top of the stairs she saw thick black smoke in the air. Something else seemed to have caught fire. Chaya paused for a moment and listened. Hopefully no one was hurt. There was a I can never say this word. Basically, loads and loads of shouts and water sloshing as guards fought to contain the fire. Chaya coughed, her throat feeling itchy and dry. The keys had to be there somewhere. She hunted all around, but there was no sign of them. She bent over the ledge under which the prison logs were kept and swept her hands around the recess to check if they were there. Heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs. Chaya sprang up on the ledge and hoisted herself onto a torch bracket on the wall. A very large man with an open mouth and chipped teeth tramped into the entrance hall, a clinking noise coming every time he moved. She watched him from the perch above, and when he passed under her, she saw something glint at his side. The man had a bunch of keys on his belt. A bunch of keys. So this must be Jams. Chaya dropped down on top of him and grabbed for the keys. He staggered around with her on his head, roaring, whilst she threw a canister to the ground. Smoke billowed everywhere. Jumping off the guard, she raced to the railings and fitted a key into it. She bent low to see through the smoke, fitting key after key with shaking hands while Jams staggered towards her through the haze. One of the keys slotted in and Chaya yanked the gate open with a loud creak. She was slipping through when she pulled up short by a jerk from behind as Jams lifted her clean off the floor. As the smoke cleared, she found herself face to face with him, pressed against the wall with her feet dangling above the ground. Really sorry, she said. I shouldn't have done that. Jams' nostrils flared as he brought his face, purple with rage, closer to Chaya. So the prison guard in charge of the keys has got Chaya pressed up against the wall, feet dangling, and you can tell he's going to be fuming. But we're going to leave it there.